Hello everyone, my name is Lex and you're on the IT Beard channel. I remind you that on my channel I talk about how IT specialists live, about the IT sphere, I share my experience, I do interviews with representatives from our field. In general, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, be sure to subscribe not to miss just a ton of most useful information. Well, that's all for now. And we went further. A lot of people ask me how to start, where to approach, how to become a programmer, IT specialist, anyone, that is how. Enter where we work with you, those who already work in IT. How to get into our field. And in order not to answer each person in personal comments, I decided to make this video. Let's define that IT is not only about programmers. Oddly enough, there are also testers on the light, there are business analysts, there are technical writers, there are designers, UX, UI specialists, there are sales managers, there are PR managers, there are managers, there are sales, there is internal and external PR. They are all very different. These are absolutely different directions. Of course, there are programmers here too. There are testers here that everyone has definitely heard of. There are a bunch of different managers. This is a recruitment manager. This is an office manager. This is a project manager. This is a manager. Command. This is a resource manager. In general, there are many different professions in IT, not only related to programming. Therefore, my first advice to you, definitely look at all the interviews that are currently on the channel and determine the area that suits you. Maybe programming is not your gold mine, but it's not your sweet spot. Perhaps you'll really like sales management. Either you will really like testing, either design. Be sure to watch the interview to simply get an idea of what. There are professions in our field. In general, I divide all people who want to enter IT into two groups. These are the people who have time to smoothly enter, and those people who don't have time. How do these groups differ? First of all, the first group mainly consists of young people, pupils, students, guys whose profession they work in principle may not like it, but satisfies them. And they can slowly change their profession and look at IT. The second group of guys are those who don't have time. What does it mean there's no time to get in? It means life has squeezed you somehow, or some other factors influence the entry. But here, in fact, I think there are only two options. The first is that you like to go so much that you just can't speak the desire. I didn't know, lived the whole life there, I don't know, was electrician, musician, and then found out there is an IT field, and you've been so overwhelmed that you just want to run as fast as possible. These guys are worth their weight in gold. There are a few of them, and respect to them for being there. There is the second category. More precisely, for the category of guys who don't have time, these are the guys who the financial issue often tightens, or some issue about distribution at the university tightens, and they urgently need to find their first job in the IT sphere. And if today's video will be especially relevant for the second category, then for the first category of people who have time. You should choose, I advise you to choose. Few people talk about it for some reason. You just need to look around. Try everything that is in IT. I've already said, watched all your interviews. After you've watched the interviews, you write down the directions you liked, the languages you liked, the trace programming, that testing technology. It could be automatic testing or manual application testing, something else. Choose the sphere that you liked and write it down in a notebook. And start testing each of your entries if you have time. Want web development in Python? Go, read what Python is, and try to write your first website. Do you want JavaScript in web development? After Python, they sat down, quietly read a little JavaScript, did an introductory lesson on JavaScript 2, wanted to know what a technical writer is. Let's try to write a technical article. You guys have the coolest forum just because you have time. During this time, you can try different directions, understand what you like and don't like, and what to spend your main bulk of time in the future, what to do for those who want to hurry up, like decides. Again, if we are not talking about programming testing, then you just need to look, ask, find out what it's like for your own acquaintances, because you have a limited resource of time. I would advise you a thing that works 100%. If you want to quickly get into IT, then you just need to look at the market and at the number of offers that are available for vacancies. Of course, this is where it comes from. Everyone thinks these are software testers on job vacancies in the market. Everything about testing and programming. Accordingly, if you want to become a tester and decide on manual testing or automatic testing using programming, if it's programming, then you just take in one of the most popular languages. If you don't know what languages are popular now, I'll list them quickly for you. This is JavaScript, this is Java, this is Python 3, this is PHP, this is C#, and this is Go. Here you are, please. 6 languages to focus on. Go to the platform where there are vacancies for your region, see which offers are more. Look at the requirements that are in these proposals and try according to these requirements. That is, write out the requirements for a candidate for several vacancies, see what is the same in them, and try to prepare according to these requirements. Briefly, this is your main action plan to find a popular technology and try to learn it. Before starting to study any technology or any direction in IT, be sure to determine 3 parameters. Determine whether you want to program or test or something else to do in IT. If the choice fell on programming, then you must choose the language in which you will be programming, because here you can drown, you can choose for years. Just choose one of the languages I told you about, or from those languages that are popular in your region. This could be web programming, it could be programming for operating systems. Knowing the general direction of programming language, if it's a programming direction, the goal of programming, you can start learning quite calmly. And I also single out 3 types of learning. The first type of learning is self-education, and it is suitable for almost everyone, except those who lack perseverance, who need additional motivation, as practice shows. In principle, everyone needs it, meaning only a few self-learners really grow in IT. Self-study is always hard, especially in our time when there are a lot of distractions. But nevertheless, if you want, you can study by yourself. Please look for literature, books, Twitter channels, Reddit. Look at the requirements for the IT jobs you like, jot down these requirements and simply for each of the technologies and requirements. Learn some material, do some project. Here's how self-education happens. See what the market needs and study what the market needs. The second most popular way to learn is through courses. Courses can vary widely. Courses can be offline. Courses can be online. Courses can be interactive and non-interactive. Courses can vary with varying lengths, with varying intensity when you study twice a week or 7 times a week. In general, here it is up to you. The only thing I always say, pay attention to the teacher, not the name of the courses. If you have a recommendation from a school, of course, it's good that it's recommended. Read about him, maybe contact him. In general, some courses I can advise you, I can't say for sure because everyone has their own experience each. About your teacher. Everyone learns at different paces, and I know this well because I once had my own courses. Therefore, it's not really good to look at schools based on some negative reviews. It's all very personal here. But from the courses, you will get at least a mentor, a teacher who will spend time with you and say where you did something wrong and get a structured program. Thirdly, the method of formation is education. Entry not only through university, it only applies to students. But personally, I think universities provide a lot of extra information these days. And yet it takes 4 or 5 years to learn to be a programmer. But this taste. While you're young, you can afford it. When you're older, you still going to university is a waste of time. There is a 4th way, but it's not really a method, but an auxiliary to everything else. It's a mentor. Always, throughout all your education, you don't know which ways you don't enter. You should have a person who will tell you that you did it like a who and need to redo it. It's called a mentor, mentorship. You can say mentors. In chats, you can search on the internet. In the comments to this video, for example, you can search through friends, through hackathons, in all IT parties. You can find someone who would be interested in sharing their experience. People who have chosen not programming or are interested not in programming to go further. You will probably not be particularly. And here's what those who want to become programmers or testers or technical specialists in the future should know. You need to know how computers work and how to use them. Surprisingly, even people who are not in the Pepe d'Amor, excuse the expression, came to our testing courses. They didn't know how, not that they could reinstall the Windows, but in principle, they didn't need to know that. They didn't know how to run the task manager. These are basic computer skills, and you should have them, about how the computer is arranged. Inside, you probably don't need to know much, unless you want to program microcontrollers. For a regular developer or mobile developer, it's enough to know that there's RAM, hard disks, a processor, and minimally about how they interact. This is at a very basic level. The second thing to know is math, and it's a very tricky question. I'm not saying you need to know some universal math, which is only given in technical universities. You need to know basic math, school level, what addition, multiplication, subtraction, division are. And it would be great if you know what exponentiation and division are. An absolute integer to know the remainder of the division, that's all you'll need in 95% of cases from mathematics. I didn't understand, thank you. And the third thing that wouldn't hurt to know in principle, you don't have to know, but it would be a big plus for both you and the employer to know the basics of computer science. The basics of how computers work again is a bit deeper. The basics of how to work with data, the basics of algorithms, well, computer science, the basics of networks. That is, some things are quite basic for any programmer. As for instance, an alphabet for a person who can read, which you just need to know or navigate in. There are tons of books, both hard and not so hard. I recommend for familiarization just to watch the CS50 course from Harvard. And that, in principle, will be enough. The first 10 lectures, they are in Russian, they are in English, you can take a look, figure out what they're talking about. If you understand what they're talking about, that will be enough for the first time. Sioma, what else wouldn't hurt to know in conjunction with technical knowledge? It's very cool and it wouldn't even interfere. It's necessary to know this before getting a job, before starting to learn. During the learning process, you need to learn something else in parallel, and here's what it works with. You definitely need to learn how HID and HID-like systems work, how to work with GitHub. As we keep our code in a consistent state. Find out what a consistent state is, how we control the version of our code. This needs to be known. You must learn this alongside the programming or testing. Also, you must be able to use at least one program on the task time accounting. I'll leave a link in the description. It's $10 a month. You can buy it, see how it works, figure it out. Or watch videos just to understand how you will be given tasks and how you will track, monitor where you will be logging the time spent on a task. You should also have the skills of that. How teams work and be able to work in a team. These skills are called know. These are basically all the skills I'm currently naming. They are partly soft skills, a popular term. I even have a video about it, so the skills of working in a team is a whole science, perhaps. There are people who do this very professionally, they earn money on this, but you, in principle, as developers, testers, and any people involved in the product creation process need to know how the team works, what processes they follow. This is Kanban, this is Agile, this is Scrum. These are some other methodologies and methods that you need to at least read about. In the best case scenario, to have experience with these processes. By the way, this experience can be gained, for example, at courses or working in a team on some startup. The fourth thing you need to learn anyway. In our time, English is absolutely the language. There are tons of materials in English. Almost all community of all programming languages, the whole community, it's all in English. At least you'll have to read a lot in English. If you're zero in English, you must, not from the very beginning, not before learning programming, but at least parallel to learning programming, improve your knowledge at least of reading. I'm not talking about communication, but communication is also important because we often, at least in Belarus, we are outsourcing to Europe, to America, and talking to customers. Night shadows are really needed. Indeed, especially testers, I would advise them before going to courses right away to learn English at a reading level, because you need it even more, because you will be formally describing bugs in a language. And of course, overall, you need to be not self-isolated, an open person. You need to be able to communicate, develop this skill, maybe read some Carnegie, and just being able to convey your thought adequately. This is a very important skill. It's also a soft skill. It's often noticed during interviews. Of course, in terms of motivation, it's very important that you like what you do, because if you want to get in just for the money, then when you see a cat pulling you, to vomit, well, who knows? Then your training will be dragged on for not 1 month, but maybe a year. And it's not a fact that something worthwhile will come out after training. So if you feel that this is not yours at all. Nice safe. What you have, I don't know, the temperature rises, you sweat at the sight of Visual Studio or at the sight of some code. Immediately quit this business and look for what you like. Most likely, IT is not for you. And finally, a few answers to the most frequently asked questions in the comments or questions that people write to me in Telegrams and Instagrams somewhere else. Does a front-end developer need to know CSS and HTML? Is necessary? And to anyone. I believe that even a backend developer needs to know HTML and CSS because sooner or later it might turn out that there will be no front-end developer, or he will get sick, and the backend will say, well, you're not a backend, well, go fix this HTML, and you don't know how to work with it, well, it's a shame late. Shame. Don't you know the timeline of the CSSR in our time? If you're working with the web or even with mobile, it's, I don't know, it's like not knowing multiplication tables and calculate with a calculator. Well, come on. Does a front-end developer need to know Node.js? I believe they do. I'm not a front-end developer, I'm more back-end. But I encounter front-end all the time. And I can say that even if you're working purely with front-end, without back-end on JavaScript, you need nodes at least for your dependency settings, file minification for TypeScript translation, which everyone is using now. Suffering in normal JavaScript. In general, you need a minimum knowledge of the node in any case, at least how to install it, run it, launch some commands to So, well, yes, but yes, a front-end developer is needed, I believe, in my opinion. Where to start learning C? I would say that sharps are mostly about web development of APIs and websites, so start learning sharps. In your development, start learning C keying from the language, then switch to .NET. The version of .NET is important. In our time, .NET code is relevant. And in principle, you can start with it right away, but I recommend practicing this way core, and yet spread the theory to the .NET Framework Classic from version 4.5 and higher. There is a small difference. And you need, I think, a little bit to understand what exactly is the .NET Framework, what is .NET Core, and how they interact with each other. But in general, do all the practice on .NET Core because it will soon become the prevailing technology. .NET Framework will die. Which databases to start learning? Take MySQL or take MongoDB if it's a new SQL database. Either take one or the other, first MySQL, then MongoDB, and learn on them. This is the most common of your data in your segments, and not in the revolutionary segment. So take them accordingly, and please go ahead. You will know MSQL. You will be able to work with absolutely any SQL base. There are small differences in principle, which more precisely probably have big differences at a deep level. But in general, a regular developer does not see these differences if you learn the syntax. It could be that from religious SQL databases. You can apply it to almost any religious databases. And again, SQL smears. Who needs to know the database? I believe that backend developers need to know the database 100%, regardless of whether they work for the web or not. Web. Mobile developers need to know. And of course, the guys who program any refrigerators, microwaves, need to know the database. Because there also somewhere data needs to be stored. What about front-end developers? They sort of in practice database. Don't come in handy especially, but in order to pass a joint development, I would also recommend them to study how a database works, at least basic SQL syntax. Testers need a database. They should be able to make queries. I'm not saying they have to write some query along with the programming language. At least just install the program through which you can work with MySQL and make a query, not just simply project. You need to be able to make requests properly. Operations on groups. This is really necessary for testers because it will greatly simplify your life. Do you need university level math? Programmers. In 95% of cases, as I said, it's not needed. If you're a regular mobile developer or a regular web developer who will do everyday tasks, and we have a lot of this routine, it's mathematics for you besides as a division by modulus and the remainder of the division. It will be. But if you want to engage in machine learning, big data or something, creating new high-speed libraries that need to work fast, evaluating their complexity, here you will need mathematics of university level because such is not taught in school. But come on, there are very few such specialists out of the entire mass of programmers, and this knowledge can always be pulled up on some courses. Therefore, don't be afraid. University mathematics is not required in 95% of cases, in my opinion. You can get in without it. Then, the most popular question, does a programmer need English? Needed, that's all. Simply without basis, it is needed. Do you need to know computer science and everything related to algorithms, networks, and data structures at the beginning? As I said a little earlier, it will be a big plus if you handle computer science very well. But in general, to start programming in our time, you do not need to be a specialist in this. nevotate ka reziptar, but during the development process, after 3 to 4 years, you will naturally come to the point where this knowledge will come to you. You will be counting something over the networks, you will be counting something by the computer device, and eventually, side will settle in you. But there is no such requirement at the beginning that you really need to know a universal program. Network operations and the OSI model. No. The last question, how to pass CBs? Often they ask me, I don't know why. Why? Why am I surprised? Because I have a whole video on how to detour. So first watch this video, continue with the interviews once, twice, 3 times. You can even go to 30 job interviews. It's okay. The main thing here is not to stop. The main thing is to always continue. And the main thing is to draw conclusions from previous interviews, why they didn't take you. Get feedback. And strengthen your weak feet. Many just wait for damn motivation. Basically, this is all I wanted to tell today about how to get into IT. So thank you for watching this video. Put your future or present IT likes. Subscribe to Telegram, follow us on Instagram, join our Discord server. There are a lot of us there and you can get help. Be sure to share this video with your friends. Well, Lexi T. Beard was with you. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.